The warning alarm screamed across the glass-walled control room like a living thing, sharp and relentless, cutting through the hum of machines and human chatter. Red lights pulsed. Screens flickered. And in that single, suffocating moment, Arman Qureshi made a decision that would cost him his job, or save hundreds of lives. His hand hovered over the emergency override switch, trembling, not from fear of the system, but from the weight of disobedience. Because just 30 seconds earlier, the CEO himself had given a direct order. Do not shut it down. If you believe in kindness and second chances, take a moment right now to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. Axe echoes the stories. Stories like this deserve to be heard. Arman wasn't a hero. Not in the way movies like to show. He was a single father, barely holding life together with worn-out routines and quiet sacrifices. Every morning, before the sun rose over the hazy skyline of the city, he would wake his 8-year-old son, Zion, with a gentle shake and a whispered promise that today would be better. Some days, he believed it. Most days, he just hoped his son wouldn't notice the doubt behind his smile. Their apartment was small, tucked above a noisy street where vendors shouted from dawn till dusk. It wasn't much, but it was theirs. And in that cramped space filled with mismatched furniture and schoolbooks scattered across the table, Arman found purpose. Ever since his wife passed away 3 years earlier, life had become a constant balancing act. Grief had no schedule, bills didn't wait, and raising a child alone meant every decision carried double the weight. Arman had no luxury of mistakes. That's why this job mattered. He worked as a systems supervisor at Helios Transit Corporation, one of the largest transport companies in the region. Their pride was a state-of-the-art high-speed rail system, sleek, fast, and marketed as the safest transportation network ever built. Arman's job was to monitor operations, respond to anomalies, and ensure everything ran like clockwork. And for years, it had. Until that day. It started like any other shift. The sun hung bright in a clear sky, casting long shadows over the steel tracks that stretched like veins across the city. Commuters filled the trains, families, workers, students, each person trusting the system to carry them safely. Arman had just taken a sip of lukewarm coffee when the first alert appeared. A small flicker on one of the monitors. A minor systems inconsistency in one of the central rail segments. Nothing alarming at first glance. But something about it didn't feel right. He leaned closer, fingers moving quickly across the console. Data streams opened, numbers recalculated, patterns analyzed. The anomaly wasn't random, it was growing. Then came the second alert. And the third. Within minutes, the calm hum of the control room shifted into something tense, uneasy. Engineers began murmuring. Supervisors leaned over screens. The system was behaving unpredictably. Arman's heart tightened. He had seen patterns like this before, not here, not in real life, but in simulations during training. Cascade failures. One small glitch triggering another, spiraling into something catastrophic. He ran deeper diagnostics. What he saw made his stomach drop. A synchronization error between the central control system and one of the busiest rail lines. Timing discrepancies. Communication delays between trains. In simple terms, it meant one thing. Collision risk. He immediately escalated the issue. Minutes later, the CEO, Raza Malik, appeared on the secured video line. His face was calm, controlled, the kind of composure that came from years of power and authority. Arman explained everything, his voice steady but urgent. The system needed to be shut down immediately. All trains on the affected line had to be halted. But the CEO shook his head. The decision came cold and sharp. No shutdown. The reason was as brutal as it was simple. It was peak operational hour. Hundreds of thousands depended on the system. A shutdown would cause chaos, financial loss, and public backlash. Malik insisted the anomaly was minor and could be corrected without drastic action. Arman felt something twist inside him. He looked at the live feed of the trains. Carriages filled with people. Children leaning against windows. Workers scrolling through phones. Lives moving forward, unaware of the invisible danger racing beneath them. He thought of Zion. He thought of the nights his son would wait for him, pretending not to be sleepy just to spend a few extra minutes together. And suddenly, the decision wasn't about rules anymore. It was about responsibility. Minutes passed. The system grew more unstable. The error spread like cracks through glass. Then came the alarm. The one no one wanted to hear. A critical failure warning. The room erupted into chaos. Arman's pulse thundered in his ears. The calculations ran again in his mind. Distances. Speeds. Timings. If nothing was done, 2 trains would meet on the same track within minutes. 300 passengers. 300 lives. And he had been told to do nothing. His hand hovered over the emergency override. He knew what it meant. Immediate termination. Legal consequences. Possibly worse. He could lose everything. His job. His home. His ability to provide for his son. For a split second, fear gripped him. Then he saw Zion's face in his mind again. And something inside him settled. He pressed the switch. The system screamed as it initiated the override. Red warnings flooded every screen. Automatic protocols kicked in. Trains began to decelerate. Signals turned red across the network. In the control room, silence fell, heavy, stunned, disbelieving. Arman didn't move. He watched the data. Watched the speeds drop. Watched the distance between the 2 trains shrink, then stop. Meters apart. Close enough for passengers to see each other through the glass. But not close enough to collide. 300 lives, suspended on the edge of disaster, saved in the final seconds. The aftermath came quickly. Security escorted Arman out of the control room before the system had even fully stabilized. His badge was taken. His access revoked. No words of thanks. No acknowledgement. Only consequences. The days that followed were heavy with uncertainty. News of the near-miss began to leak, but the official statement downplayed it. A technical precaution. No mention of the override. No mention of Arman. At home, life didn't pause for his crisis. Zion still needed breakfast. Homework still needed checking. Bills still needed paying. Arman smiled for his son, even when worry gnawed at him. He didn't know what would come next. He didn't know how he would explain losing his job. But deep down, there was something else. A quiet, steady peace. Because he knew one thing for certain. He had done the right thing. Days later, the truth began to surface. Engineers leaked internal reports. Independent analysts reviewed the data. The conclusion was undeniable. If the system had not been shut down when it was, the collision would have been inevitable. The story spread. Not as a corporate incident. But as a human one. A single father. A quiet supervisor. A man who chose lives over orders. Public pressure mounted. Questions were asked. Accountability demanded. And suddenly, the narrative shifted. Arman wasn't just an employee who disobeyed. He was the reason hundreds of families were still whole. One afternoon, as sunlight filtered through the thin curtains of their apartment, there was a knock on the door. Arman opened it cautiously. Outside stood a group of people, strangers, yet not. A woman stepped forward, her eyes filled with emotion. She held the hand of a little girl. They had been on that train. So had many others behind her. One by one, they spoke, not with grand speeches, but with quiet gratitude. Thank you. You saved us. We are here because of you. Arman didn't know what to say. For the first time since that day, the weight he carried shifted, not into relief, but into something deeper. Meaning. Zion stood beside him, looking up with wide eyes, slowly understanding what his father had done. And in that moment, Arman realized something powerful. He hadn't just saved strangers. He had shown his son what it meant to stand for something greater than fear. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like, comment, and share. Stories like this remind us what humanity truly looks like. Special request, comment, courage over fear, if you believe one brave decision can change lives. Weeks later, Helios Transit Corporation issued a public statement. The CEO resigned. Policies were revised. Safety protocols strengthened. And Arman? He was offered his job back. But this time, it wasn't just a position. It was recognition. He accepted, not for the company, but for the responsibility he had always believed in. Because some decisions define more than a moment. They define who we are. And sometimes, in the space between fear and courage, one choice is all it takes to save the world, at least for 300 people who will never forget the day a single dad chose to do what was right.